What's up, guys? Welcome to JotaOnCode. So today we're going to take a look into the Kubernetes components, right? And the idea is the following. We're going to take a look into some of the different components of this page that comes here, but actually the thing is that sometimes taking a look into all of the different parts that comes from this page is kind of it's kind of hard to actually understand everything that's going on here. So I would like to actually go from the need up to each one of the different parts that we're going to be solving for our particular problem of the ckad training that we try to do, right? We will see. So the idea is the following. Here is the solution that's going to be for what's going to be the system for the library, right? We have the following. We have the kubernetes basics. So these are going to be the basic components. It's not going to be the most in-depth parts, right? If you want to go in that direction, then I really recommend to actually go to the source and take a look into this part here, because they give you a very good explanation of every single part of the system of Kubernetes, right? So basically our problem is the following. We're going to have a cluster, and this cluster is going to, it would be nice to have some sort of way to communicate with this cluster in a clear way, and that's going to help us to get the status of the cluster, to know about what's going on with the cluster, or even just create new resources, create new things. In order to do so, we are going to create something that's going to be here, but we're not going to create anything. Actually, it's going to be there. It's going to be command line. We're going to have command line to work with this cluster, right? So this command line is going to be communicating with a certain API, right? So that means that we're going to have here a certain API, and that API is going to allow us to communicate with this cluster, right? So this is going to be inside of the control plane. Let's say that we assign some of these guys here, like saying the schools and the users. We're going to assign it to a node. What does it mean? Well, actually that means the following. A node is going to be it's going to be a machine. It's going to be a working machine that's going to allow us to get some resources from it, like say CPU and memory and so on and so forth, right? So these two are going to go to this guy, while the catalog is going to go to node number 2, which is going to provide us with some other kind of resources. Let's say that by some reason our catalog is going to have more consumption in regards to memory RAM, because we have a little bit of cache for all of the different books that we're going to be handling. So therefore we want to have different resources than for the schools and the users. So therefore we give it to a different machine, a different node. We can say that also in terms of Kubernetes, these three guys at the moment are going to be just schools, users, and catalog. They're going to be pods, right? And they are going to be pods. This means that they are going to be the smallest computational thing that you can actually get from to the cloud, we can say, in the Kubernetes cluster, right? That's an informal way of saying what is going to be a pod, right? So we're going to see a little bit of the proper structure of a pod, what is going to be given to us, and how does this pod get into this node, right? So for doing so, we're going to have some other guy there that's going to say, okay, the pod of the users and the pod of the schools is going to need, for example, certain resources, and we're going to have some sort of affinity with this node or this working station, right? That means that these two guys are going to get to this node, but this one that has different resources and different needs, then it's going to get to node number 2. So there is someone who is going to put that image there, and it's going to be making a certain algorithm in order to provide this pod into that place. That's going to be called a scaler, who is going to scale our pod into the system, right? Not only that, but it will be nice to, if you are going to be getting some information from this guy, from this command line, into the information of the cluster, we're going to need to have some sort of place where you got what is the current status of the information of the cluster, right? So there is going to be something that's going to allow us to know this in time in a certain key value pair of values, with also in regards to the time, right? So this is going to be the database. It's going to be database, right? This database is going to provide us with the status of the database of the current cluster that we have here. Not only that, but actually we want that API not only to get information in regards to the current situation of the cluster, but we also want to make some sort of operations that comes into the cluster itself, right? So therefore we're going to have something called controllers, and these controllers is going to allow us to make different operations into the cluster, like saying I want to create a brand new resource, I want to create expose a certain resource, right? So this is going to be the guy that is going to help us to do these kind of operations there. The thing is the following: let's suppose that by some reason you're not going to only have this kind of operations in regards to the cluster itself of the Kubernetes cluster, but also you're going to have some things that are going to be specific for your own cloud. So for your cloud provider, like saying this Kubernetes cluster is going to run to the Google Cloud system, then Google Cloud provider, then you're going to need to have certain controller that's going to help us to work with this. So we're going to have cloud controllers, right? So that's good. So far so good. We have the API, the scheduler, a database, and the controllers that comes for the cloud, and the controllers that comes for the cluster itself, right? The different nodes here. These schools and these users are going to be, at the moment, they're going to be also single containers, right? But could be an option that, imagine that you get something like this. You could also get something like this if you wanted to. This, in this case, could be the logs, for example, right? So you're going to get here, you're going to get the users and the logs inside of the same pod. That's what I'm trying to represent there, right? Therefore, you can have more than one container inside of the same pod. That's good. So far so good. If you want to get information in regards to a certain node, then the node should actually need to understand and communicate somehow with the API and the cluster itself, right? I mean, you need somehow to communicate with this node and these different containers and all this structure that you have here. So we're going to call it agent. This agent is going to be in charge of working with these different parts of the system, in particular the one that belongs to the node itself, right? Not only that, but you're going to need also to communicate a little bit with other parts of the system. So there you're going to need to have some sort of someone who's going to handle these kinds of communications inside of the system itself, and that's going to be a proxy. So this is going to be per node. So this is going to be repeated also for this particular case as well. Put this to the right. So that's it. That's some of the basic components that you get here. So now if you get here into this one more time, you see some of these diagrams here and some of the different definitions here. So the formal names for these ones is going to be the following. It's going to be kube API server. So that's this one. Then you have etcd for the database, which is going to be a key value store used as a Kubernetes, right? For all the data you have in that moment, right? What else? You're going to have the scheduler. Then you're going to have the kube controller manager. So this is going to be manager is going to. Could be that I'm wrong in some of these definitions. So if that's the case, just leave a comment down below, so I have more insights in regards to these topics. I'm just trying to give not a very formal definition, but actually didactic definition of some of these parts coming from the problem and the needs of each one of the different parts of the system. Because once things actually make sense in regards to certain logic that comes to the problem, then it's more easy for me to actually remember these parts, right? So in this case, you have the cloud controller manager, right? So this is going to be the cloud controller manager. And then you have the node components, which is going to be the kubelet, which is going to be an agent, right? So this is going to be called kubelet. This one too. And the other one is going to be kubeproxy. So this is going to be kubeproxy. The thing is the following. Let's suppose that you have this part here, and you have a lot of different parts here that you can actually work with and just take a look if you want to know more about it. Like for example, this part here of monitoring and logging information, right? We are going to take a look into some different techniques of logging information that we have with Kubernetes, like FluentD or all options that are out there, right? That's going to come afterwards. The thing is the following. For example, for the case of communicating from the agent here, when you want to work with Kubernetes, the agent is going to be working with the different containers and so on and so forth. It has something called container runtime interface. This is very interesting. Actually, is the basically you have different kind of container runtimes that you can work with, like saying Rakiti or Docker. These are the most common ones that I know from out there. These two guys out there, they have their own way to actually communicate with the Kubernetes cluster, and this is a common interface that they can actually use, and that is going to help them to communicate more easy way with this container, with these different containers, right? So yeah, that's just one more data there. But if you want to get a bit deeper into knowing about this guy, I suggest just to take a look into this area here of all this definition comes with this. Yeah, that's it for today. Just to take a look a little bit in regards to the basic areas of what's going to be the Kubernetes components, and later on we're going to see how these different areas are going to be coming all together, right? So we're going to see how we can create a certain deployment that's going to create a certain schedule at some point that's going to give us this pod into the cloud and all these areas there. So we're going to see how to expose some of these different deployments as well. So that's going to be some of the very first steps. Next step that we're going to see is going to be the UI. So we are going to create a little bit of a video for a UI that's going to be Next.js. The idea is to have some of the requirements that comes from the front end up and running in the UI, and later we're going to go to the services, and later we're going to go to infrastructure. So we're going to be dividing these different kind of videos there. So that's it for today. I hope that you liked the video of today, and if you did so, just give it a like and subscribe to the channel, and thank you very much for today. Have a good one. Ciao, ciao.